what I really want people to know is failure is a neutral event.
Yeah.
What I see as some huge, massive, insurmountable failure, somebody else might look at and go, that's no big deal, and vice versa. We could line up 10 people, having them experience the exact same event, and we'd get 10 different interpretations and perceptions of it. We're the ones applying meaning to the event. So if you buy into that for 30 seconds, if that's the case, then what else could we see that event as? You said this perfectly. It might be a lesson. It might be a gift. It might be a redirect. It might be a one door shuts so many more can open. It might be a not now. There's so many messages that event could be. Yet we have a tendency to default to failure. There's something wrong with me. Why am I not like this person? All of that stuff. And that's just not where confidence lives.
Welcome back to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Hurdle. There are not any announcements today, so we're going to get right into the content, unless you just want me to kibitz for about 15 minutes while you wait on what you're actually going to learn on the episode, but we don't do that on this show. So I am going to take you towards a person that I am personally super pumped to interview. She's the perfect guest for this show, and you will soon see why. It is Nicole Kalil, and she is an in-demand speaker and dynamic host of This Is Women's Work podcast. So add that to your list. Go subscribe. You can hit pause on mine to go subscribe to hers super quick. Come back. Known as the Confidence Sherpa, Nicole reveals how-to strategies that set her apart from other self-help experts. Previously a Fortune 100 C-suite executive, she's helped thousands of women reclaim their confidence so they can live authentically, both personally and professionally. Nicole lives with her husband and daughter in Andover, Massachusetts. Nicole, the Confidence Sherpa, welcome to the Bombshell Business Podcast, where we like to be bold, brave, unwaveringly confident women in business.
My favorite kind of women. Thank you so much for having me, Amber. I'm excited to be here.
I don't even know where to start unpacking, because the way that you look at things is a little bit different. And I think there's so much of your message that resonates with me. So I'm excited to share that with our audiences. But can we just start with, where does confidence really come from?
Yeah. So
let's just get to it.
Let's get to it. Dive right in. I love that. So I have this belief that we have been fed a line of crap, right? So there's all this mixed messages, false messages about both what confidence is and where it comes from. And so kind of made a mission. Personally, it was for me at first. And then, as it often does, it became so much bigger. But okay, so to answer your question, confidence is firm and bold trust in self. That's it. Firm and bold trust in self. And if you don't believe me, trust me, I geeked out. I went to the etymology of the word, the root of the word in Latin, how it translated in Middle English, how it translates into other languages. And it always comes back to some form of trust, belief. Even faith pops up a little bit. But it is ultimately, and I like the firm and bold trust because it almost elevates the trust to a different level. And I think that there is an element of implied action behind it.
Yes.
I trust myself so much that I'm going to go do this thing I really want to do. I'm going to go say that thing that feels like it's, coming out of my being, whatever it is, firm and bold trust in self.
And that also means that if you have a firm and bold trust in yourself, that you are also, I won't say inviting, but perhaps accepting the consequences that come with that. Can we unpack that a little bit from your perspective of coaching thousands of women on this?
Yeah. So I love that you said it that way, because I have failure or mistakes or fear or doubt. I have all those things as a confidence builder. Why? Because it's super easy to trust ourselves when everything is going according to plan. When all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and we're winning and we're achieving, trusting ourselves isn't all that hard. It's the detours and the missteps and the setbacks and all of those things where really firm and bold trust in self is really built at a deep, intimate level. And so I I think a lot of times we think as of confidence or trusting ourselves as this, I don't know, like when we're doing that, we're always winning and everything's going right and there's no problems. And it's like, no, that it doesn't require a lot of trust to be in that space where we really begin to intimately know ourselves and get into action is often during our most challenging times, during the times where the you know what hits the fan, during the times where we're completely unsure.
Yes.
And that's where trust, I think that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. And it is because like there is wisdom in counsel, of course.
Absolutely.
But then at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So you can get all the counsel that you want, but you can't make the decision based on what Joe said or what Sally said. Like you have to make the decision based on all the data points, your own life experiences, whether you're making objective or subjective decisions. It has to come from you and you have to live with whatever that is. And if you can do that, I feel like, you know, when I lean on somebody else to make a choice, then that opens up the door for it being their success or their failure. And then that's also, you know, I can build resentment or I can build jealousy. If it's out there, there's all these other things that come into play. If it's done from in here, I have to live with myself. And then I have to decide what am I going to do with this. If I'm winning, I can celebrate it. And then that builds more confidence. And if I maybe made not the best choice, then I can learn, I can fail forward. I can learn from the loss. And that to
Absolutely
me feels so much more secure than it being this thing out here that I'm trusting in.
Okay, so Amber, you said so many things in there that I think are worth circling back on because they're important distinctions that I think sometimes we don't make. So confidence, the way it plays out or the way it looks to me is when you know who you are, own who you're not, and choose to embrace all of it. So the knowing who you are, it's a higher level of self-awareness. It's self-appreciation. It's this like, these are my unique gifts, abilities, superpowers, talents. This is what makes me me. And let's pause for a moment on that. There is no other you in history, and there will never be another you in the future. That makes you magical in my mind. So this idea of like, you know, I'm here for a reason, and I have these unique abilities and talents, and I want to intimately get connected to them. But then simultaneously, the owning who you're not. And this is a little bit of like, okay, you know, characteristics or things about you, but it also can be who's not meant for you, what's not meant for you, or I'm not meant for that. And it flies in the face of this message, especially that we get as women, that we're supposed to be it all, do it all, have it all, you know, be everything to everyone all the time. And confidence doesn't live in that space. That's perfectionism. Perfectionism is the enemy of confidence. Confidence is this is the awareness of who I am and also what I'm not. And the choice that we all get to make to embrace all of that, to embrace all of ourselves so that we can, you know, put one foot in front of the other towards what really matters. So there are, you know, a lot of things that you said that led me back to that in my mind. But one of the things is this idea of, yeah, of course we want to take in other people's advice or expertise or knowledge or information. Me trusting myself isn't me thinking I have all the answers or I know what I'm doing. If I'm doing something I've never done before, when I launched my podcast, I asked all sorts of questions.
Sure.
I took in all kinds of information. Trusting myself wasn't, I'm an amazing podcaster. Trusting myself is, I have gifts and abilities that I can apply to podcasting, and I'm new, and I'm going to trust that I'll figure it out. I'm going to trust that I'll make some mistakes, and I'm going to get back up and get into action towards what matters. Trust isn't this like have it all figured out. Trust is I'm going to be okay no matter what. That to me is like,
say that again.
I don't even know what I said. So trust is not like I'm an expert or I have it all figured out. Trust is I'll be okay no matter what. Right? Yeah. Like I'll come out on the other side of this better. Something else that you said that I wanted to sort of jump back onto you is, you know, we avoid failure at all costs. Failure is a confidence builder, but what I really want people to know is failure is a neutral event.
Yeah.
What I see as some huge, massive, insurmountable failure, somebody else might look at and go, that's no big deal, and vice versa. We could line up 10 people, have them experience the exact same event, and we'd get 10 different interpretations and perceptions of it. we're the ones applying meaning to the event. So if just buy into that for 30 seconds, if that's the case, then what else could we see that event as? You said this perfectly. It might be a lesson. It might be a gift. It might be a redirect. It might be a one door shut so many more can open. It might be a not now. There's so many messages that event could be. Yes, we have a tendency to default to, failure. There's something wrong with me. Why am I not like this person? All of that stuff. And that's just not where confidence lives.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Okay. So you have so much of this, both the experience of your own journey, which, maybe we get into that as we discuss this next topic, but you also have thousands of women that you've impacted and their stories. And when I even just think about the DMs I get from my listeners alone, let alone the coaching customers I've had over the years, like, I know that had to have fed your book, Validation is for Parking. So can you talk about, like, what were the biggest things that made you go, I'm writing a book about it? Like, this has to get in as many hands as possible.
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest thing was finding out that there aren't any women out there who have it all figured out. And I had this idea that there was, right? Like, I thought confident women, were the stage walkers and the ones with the millions of followers and making millions of dollars and the perfectly behaved children wearing a size 4, but somehow, looking perfect by 7 a.m. I don't know. I had this visual of like, when X happens, then I'll feel confident. And I've come to realize that that's a false equation. It's when I'm confident, I have a higher probability of X, right? We've
so
reversed
good.
it. But what was shocking to me in my journey at a Fortune 100 financial services firm, very male dominated, is I'd run into these women who looked like they had it all together. I definitely played the part of the confident woman on the rise. And when I got to know them, I recognized they struggled just like me. 68% of women say they feel confident in one aspect of their life and not in others. So I think sometimes we see women and in their element, we think they're confident and they're just confident in that space. And so it was really important to me that we understand what confidence is, this firm and bold trust in self, and that we figure out tactical, actionable ways that we can reconnect to and build that confidence that I believe lives within inside us, because we've gotten so many wrong and false and mixed messages about what it is to be a confident woman in today's day and age. And frankly, it's killing us. The statistics are showing that as young girls, our confidence is starting to lessen around that elementary age, age 8, give or take a year or two. And we don't actually come back to a point of equal confidence with our male counterparts until our 50s.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Think about what's happening during that time. Teenage years, first career, your career trajectory, choosing your partner, having children, whatever it is you decide, if that's what but there are so many formative things happening during these years where there's this wide gap in our confidence compared to our male counterparts. And a lot of it is due to this messaging about being, nurturing, others focused, perfect, physical appearance, all of the stuff.
The filters. Oh my gosh, the filters.
And social media. And I mean, we don't really even have a shot if you think about it.
Yeah. But I think it's incumbent upon us as the elder generation to speak life into the younger, truly girls, to your point, 8 years old. Because, TikTok and everything glamorizes this idea of what something should be instead of teaching people how to be in integrity with themselves and to let that be more than enough. In fact, to let that be, to see themselves as somebody who can contribute their unique gifts to the greater picture. And that doesn't come with filters, and that doesn't come with like how many people like your post. It just doesn't come with that. That has nothing to do with what's real. And I just feel like we have we're in the season of, everybody's worried about AI. And I'm like, well, it's been kind of an AI world for a long time of just this fake synthetic existence of put your best on social media and wear the right brand. And, when we were younger, it might have been like you didn't have the right, triangle on your butt for your jeans. Like, that was as crazy as it got. But we got to have some peace and solitude. And if somebody didn't like us at school, it ended at school. It didn't follow us home.
Yeah.
There's just...
Well, let me just jump into a little bit of a tangent here. But in advance of my book launch, I hired one of the top social media firms in the country because I wanted to make sure I did everything I could possibly do. I didn't want to have any regrets. And I always hated social media prior to that, but I thought it was because I wasn't good at it, right? Because I wasn't getting the millions of followers and the tons of likes. Now, I still don't have millions of followers, but what they were able to accomplish for me in the 7 months, I went from like 3,000 followers to like 60,000 followers. I had huge engagement there. I mean, they really knew their stuff. And here's what I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt. 99.9% of what you see on social media is manufactured. It is just, it's manufactured. At best, it's manufactured. At worst, it's completely fake. And it's a little scary because so many women and young girls are out there comparing their normal, everyday, real lives to these manufactured fake things that they're seeing on social media and somehow feeling less than about themselves. And it's so disheartening. I've since stopped working with them, not because of them, they were amazing, but because I still hate social media. And it's like, no, confidence doesn't live there, at least not for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a branding person who is like the poorest social media person on the planet because my brand doesn't live there. I'm not dependent on social media to run 2 businesses. Guess what? My professional reputation and the people that work for me are the people who in real life, in real businesses, with real professional relationships, draw in the kind of people that want to work with us. And if you want to take that brand and you want it to live big on social media, then you go get with a social media person and make that happen. Because I'm not saying I don't value it. There is a storytelling, there is an exposure, but like I refuse to be hogtied by social media myself. And that earnestly protects my confidence. Because I'm not going to measure myself against somebody else who I know is buying likes. I know they have very limited engagement because you can see, oh, you have 1 million followers, but there's only 100 people who like that post. Well, that's off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's off. So I'm not going to get in that arena. And that's how I protect my confidence. So I just invite you, bombshell, as you're thinking about some of the things that we're talking about, is like when you are confident, then you can inspire that in other people, not just in your professional peers, but in little girls who are watching you. Little girls and people who are watching you on social media, if you have the filter on, if you're being real about your life, that's an opportunity for you to evoke and demonstrate confidence. So in this book, so let's just talk about validation. One thing that's super important to me is to surround myself with people who do not seek external validation, because it kills all things. It kills everything. It kills creativity. It kills your purpose. It kills your best decisions that are in your best interest. And then it kills being able to hear that inner voice. So let's talk about Validation is for Parking. Where'd you come up with that title first?
So it kind of fits me. It's a little snarky. It's a little in your face. And it ties into the biggest discovery that I had about confidence, which was that the vast majority of us are trying to seek it externally. Validation is one of those things, but it also could be compliments. It could be promotions. It could be fitting into a certain size or looking a certain way or having the perfect family and children. And again, that sort of concept that your confidence is somewhere out there and it's up to you to go find it and get someone to give it to you. Like that didn't ever make sense to me, yet that's how so many of us are unconsciously living our lives, that if X happens, then I'll feel confident. And for me, it was career achievement, income, promotions, and what ended up happening, just like it would with any of us, is when you become focused on something else to have you feel confident, you become addicted to the thing. So I would get a promotion, I'd be excited about it for like 3 seconds, and then all the fear and all the doubt and all the, imposter syndrome and all the stuff would come rushing back in. And then it was like, well, when I get the next promotion. And so I became addicted to the thing. And so validation is one of those things. If I'm constantly seeking external validation, if I need it to feel good, then it's counterproductive because I will not only not become confident, I'll become addicted to validation. And I see so many validation junkies out there, and it's sort of the crux of the book. And again, it sort of that snarky, in your face, hopefully get somebody to giggle type thing. So that was the title. But yeah, this idea that your confidence is living out there. And now sometimes people will go, well, gosh, when somebody recognizes my work, it feels good. And I always say, yeah, it's the icing on the confidence cake.
Right.
It's not the cake itself. You're right. So like validation still feels good for me. I have a lot of people who are like, I know you don't need the validation, but I really enjoyed your book. And I'm like, I am so happy you enjoyed my book. That makes me feel so good. And I didn't need you to enjoy it for me to feel good about writing it, for me to know that I was supposed to write it, for me to feel good about what I put out there, given my experience being a first-time author. Like I feel great about my book. That's confidence. Having somebody come and compliment it or validate it or give it 5 stars, that feels good, but I don't need that to be confident about my book.
Right. Right. And then it's so feedback, that whole feedback loop is an important part of a creative process or, measuring the success of something. I mean, obviously, when you put something out into the world, commercial success, I mean, again, you don't need this to feel good about your choice to do that. You knew, your inner knowing told you this is what you need to do. But when you do get, book sales or 5-star reviews or an award or something like that, that's like, I am on the right direction for my market. Like that's a, okay, more of this in this direction for these specific people. Like Bombshell did that for me, like the letters I got back and the gifts that got sent to me and just the impact that it made. Like, obviously I didn't write that book to receive any of that. But once I did, I was like, these are real issues that impacted what I talk about on stage, that impacts what we do on the podcast. So it's like, it's data to inform a strategy, but it's not I wake up every morning and, look for validation of the work that I choose to put in this world. It's a different perception, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. And I am a firm believer that we're all individual deciders of how this looks and plays out in our life. For me, I trust that I was supposed to write that book. I know that I was supposed to write that book. Nothing and no reaction changes that. I trust that I gave it my absolute best. I also trusted that as a first-time author, there's going to be a lot of things that I didn't know. As an author that didn't, get published by one of the big, I had some disadvantages. There are some, again, knowing who I am and knowing what I can bring to that situation, and also acknowledging what I'm not and what I didn't have. And like, yes, of course, feedback is great. I write about this in the book. I launched an online course in 2020 as a hard pivot because as a speaker, when everything was being canceled, I was like, what do I do? Right. So I did an online course and it tanked. It was so bad. Well, that's my interpretation of it, right? Some things, good things happen. But that was the feedback I got that reinforced something I already knew, but didn't stop to ask myself, which was, online courses are not what gets me up in the morning. I'm not excited about that. This was not ever part of I just did it because I was scared and didn't know what to do and had to do something. And, again, I'm not saying that it was wrong or bad that I did it. I just was getting feedback about, who I am and what people want from me and how I show up in the world. And it just was a great learning lesson for me to be like, well, I didn't check in with myself. I didn't listen to my inner knowing. I didn't trust what was going on. I was operating out of scarcity and fear and doubt. And guess what? I learned some things and I'm better for it. And I'm grateful for the experience with the benefit of hindsight. And I get to trust myself no matter what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. Just walking through that. I won't even call it unfortunate because all it did was validate what you already knew, but you needed that proof again, obviously, or you would not have made the choice to do that. And that's the other thing is like, we've used the term inner knowing like, oh, it's no big deal because you and I have that relationship with ourselves. But you and I both know that a lot of women don't even know where she is inside. They don't know where to even find that. So can you walk us through like how to tap into that inner knowing?
Well, let me acknowledge first, for the bulk of my adult life, I was one of those women. I did not listen to, pay attention, know where to find or what to do. I started at a financial services company, male dominated. I got everything I learned about what it was to be professional, successful, and confident was from the masculine lens. And I am not anti-men by any means.
Of course not.
But I didn't know how to be myself or show up with my authentic gifts and abilities. And so I put on the mask and I did all the things. I mean, my dating life, you could tell that I was not listening or paying any attention to any sort of inner knowing, but it was really through this discovery of the fact that I was faking confidence. I was pretending confidence, but I didn't feel any of it. This sort of come to Jesus moment in my life where I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. And ultimately, it's for me, and it might show up differently for you, it's getting into that quiet space. I would liken it to meditation. Geez. I would like it to meditation. Yeah. Whatever works for you. But for me, and I'm not a big runner. It's like going for a walk or going for a run. It's like distracting my body and my mind. So like everything gets quiet and all I'm paying attention to is this sort of quiet voice. It seems to come out of nowhere and says something that sort of knocks me off my feet a little bit. It's and here's what I want to be upfront about too. It's learning to distinguish my inner knowing from all the chatter and all the other noise that goes on in my head. So I call the mean voice that we all have, I call that head trash because I want it to sound gross and disgusting.
We call her Gertrude. She sits right here. She
yes, exactly, right? So Gertrude is in my mind, head trash. It's just all the things that are never kind, never true, and that you would never say out loud to anyone you actually love. Right? You would never say that to your child or to your best friend or to your partner ever. And so yet we're communicating with ourselves in that way. Our inner knowing may challenge us, right? It might say, you're not on the right track. It might say that's not for you or that person's, not the right fit. It might say something you don't want to hear, but it'll always come from a loving, kind place. The thing you would say to someone you love. That's how I always tell the difference. It's like head trash is the bully of confidence, but that inner knowing is that soft, often quiet, sometimes hard to hear voice that's just always there. You can call it intuition, whatever. But for me, getting quiet and lessening distraction is super important for me to hear it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, there's different ways of doing that. So I have monkey mind, but I still meditate and I just like, there it is. There's another thought. Okay. It's leaving and here we go again. But even that of just honoring that you have so much head trash or all the other things going on, just recognizing that and having the space to understand how many competing thoughts are in there is helpful. I personally find that yoga is like an active meditation where I have something to focus on with my body moving and, what does that feel like why is that muscle so tight? And, this feels really, really good. And it's taking everything away of the world to focus on the pose, which then brings the quiet where maybe something comes in. Listening to music, taking a walk, swimming. There's so many different things that you can do. I just want to encourage, like when people think of like meditation and listening to your still small voice, it's scary or like, I can't do that. I don't have an attention span. It's pick the path that allows you to be as quiet internally as you can and let go of the expectations of becoming a monk because that ain't happening.
Yes. Thank you for saying that because I avoided meditation for a really long time. Because I was like, I can't stop the thoughts in my head. And somebody was like, is that what you thought you were supposed to do? And I'm like, yeah, I thought it was supposed to go blank. And that has literally never happened in all of my life. But so the list you gave is great. I would also add anything that's sort of monotonous that you do can be a really great time if you choose it to really start paying attention. So for me, sometimes that's folding laundry or, might be cutting vegetables or something where you're doing something that that is monotonous, so you don't have to totally pay attention, but it occupies some function of your brain and your body, and it creates some space for listening.
Yeah. And I think too, when I've journaled since I was about 11 years old and maybe even earlier than that, but just, very dedicated since I was about 11. And I think the thing that really serves me in that, and again, I can hear all kinds of women go, oh, I'm not a writer. And I was like, you don't have to be Mark Twain. You can literally bullet point, like, what happened to your day? How did you feel? What were you frustrated with? What are you proud of? Like, there's so many things that you can do, but what that does is it gives you the power of hindsight. And so, maybe you're going through a shitstorm, and then when you get on the other side, you can reflect back on that and you can see the decisions that you made. That alone builds confidence. Like, oh, I saw it there. I mean, I have journals where I'm like, I saw it there, I saw it there, I saw it there, but I wouldn't admit it to myself. I saw it and I ignored it. Why did I do that? Still a lesson in there. Builds your confidence.
Absolutely. And so powerful. I mean, what an incredible thing to do. One of the things that I say to myself, I say two things to myself often in my own mind. First, when my head trash starts kicking up or I'm beating myself, I just repeat over, gentle, gentle, gentle. Just my reminder to myself to be gentle with myself in the same way I would my daughter or my husband or my best friend, right? Just and over and over until I can get to that place. The second thing, it speaks to what you said. When I'm having a rough day or I've hit a tough patch, I always tell myself over and over and over again, the only thing that's missing is the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
I don't yet know how, in what way, and when this is going to work for me, but I get to trust that it will. And to me, that's, for me, the ultimate measure of confidence, because 100% of my failures, missteps, fears, doubts, trials, tribulations, tough times have, with the benefit of hindsight, served an incredibly important purpose. I don't see it when I'm in it, and it doesn't make it suck any less when I'm in it, but just trusting that element, I think, has been really helpful for me. So I say that a lot. The only thing that's missing from me, from the situation, is the benefit of hindsight.
That's so good. Those are both gentle, gentle, gentle. I'm going to steal that mantra.
It's very simple. And my head trash can be mean and nasty. So it's just like over and over.
Yeah. Yeah. And should, like, let's just be real about that too. Like, women look to us because we are known for being confident, but that doesn't mean that we're impenetrable. It doesn't mean that we don't have bad days or that we don't struggle or that we don't take hits to our confidence. It just means, and I say this all the time, like, a bombshell businesswoman is a bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman. And then everybody's like, whoa, don't put that on me. I'm like, oh no, we fall down. We just get back up. That's the difference.
Yeah. I don't know if this will resonate or not, but the way I always feel is I'm just taking bigger hits because I've taken more and all and walked into them. And I think because of some innate thing early on, and then something that was developed and chosen later on in life, this idea of taking risks has been something that I grew up with. And so I don't know. I mean, it looks bigger, I think, from the outside looking in. It looks big to write a book. It looks big, and it is, to stand in front of thousands of people on a stage. But people are like, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, I didn't start that way. I didn't start speaking on stage with 12,000 people. I would have died if you would have asked me to do that 20 years ago. I started in a training room with 3 people, and I remember that first training like it was yesterday. I over-contented, I over-prepared, it was like,
Fire
I could have
hose.
been, yeah, totally. And I sweated the entire time, and I couldn't have been any more nervous. And it's like, you take the bigger hits because you're practicing and you're putting yourself out there more, and the little risks lead to big confidence.
Yeah.
So this idea that that you get to a point, you plant your confidence flag, and you're like, I'm done, is never happened, at least not for me. It's only ever always a journey, and as you're climbing, you're practicing, and you're taking some bigger hits because they don't seem as big because you've taken some of the smaller ones. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
100%.
But that's just how it feels.
100%. And in the Bombshell Business Coaching strategy of it is like, you check in with your head, you check in with your heart, but then you also have to check in with your grit. And so one thing that, even going through my divorce, which was a shock to everybody, including me, it was like, everybody was like, oh my God, are you going to be okay? And I'm like, I had a baby when I was 16 years old and raised her to who she has become now. Obviously, she did her part and I had an army of support. But like, you think a divorce is going to take me out? Like, at 16 years old, I brought another human being onto this planet and got her to adulthood successfully. You think a divorce is going to take me out? Like, I'm not saying it's not hard. It wasn't horrible, like all those things. But just hearing you say, like, when you take a little hit, then you get used to that. And now you're just taking bigger hits, but you remember all the other hits that you've recovered from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm asking bombshells to do, is go back and show yourself, show your inner mean girl, your Gertrude, your head trash. When that person is telling you lies, show them the truth of what you've already overcome, of what you've already accomplished in this life, of the goodness that you've put into this world, and then come to the present and tell that business she's got to go. This is who I am. This is what I've proven to myself. And even if I screw this one up, I know how to recover. It's just like not that bad.
So you are literally teaching confidence live and in real time. So I'm so happy for the people who are participating. And if you're listening and you have yet to reach out to Amber and sign up, because that's exactly what it is. It's I trust myself that I can get past this because I've got a collection of evidence that tells me that I can. And if you're listening and you're a parent, as I am, my daughter's almost 10 and we're in this really important phase, from my lens as it relates to confidence. And we have to get out of the way of letting our children experience missteps, fear, failure, doubt. We can't fix it and do it all for them because we're literally getting in the way of them accumulating this knowledge, this trust, this, I get knocked down and I can pick myself up and I can dust myself off and I can get back into action towards what matters. We have to be doing that and demonstrating it so they can see it and for ourselves. But we also, and I am by no means a perfect parent. If you read my book, you will find that out very quickly. And that's not even what I'm striving for. I just know that part from personal experience and from all of my work on confidence. It's necessary. It is a requirement of building trust to not trust yourself. It is a requirement of building trust to get knocked down and pick yourself up. It's a requirement of trust to fail, to face fear, to have doubts in order to choose trust and courage and all the things. I always think, this idea of being fearless, it doesn't resonate with me because I've never met anybody who is. But the absence of fear to me says you're not doing anything big. You're not doing anything new or relevant or impactful or whatever. I have zero fear walking outside to get mail from my mailbox. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Like everything worth doing, everything I've ever done in my life has come with fear, sure. Also excitement and fear and doubt and knowing and trust and all those intermixed things, which is why they call it courage. When you're afraid, you choose courage. When you don't know, you choose trust. It's where the magic happens.
Absolutely where the magic happens. And again, bombshell, Nicole and I are still preaching to ourselves every single day. We're preaching to each other. No one is immune from taking hits. No one is. And no one is immune from waking up one day and feeling kind of puny and feeling kind of vulnerable and feeling kind of a little less interested in our personal power and a little, second guessing ourselves because that head trash, Gertrude, whatever you want to call it, is loud and proud so many days. And this world that we live in is just designed to demand external validation. And we have to constantly encourage each other and our own selves to overcome that space. So,
amen.
Daily, every day, all day. There are no breaks. There are no breaks from the confidence show ever. So before we get into where we can find you online, and I obviously strongly encourage anyone that is a listener of this podcast to subscribe to your podcast and anything else that they could get their hands on, because this is such a powerful message that you have. I want to ask, what parting piece of advice would you give a bombshell, bold, brave, and waveringly confident woman in business, or bombshell boy? We have a lot of those listening in as well. They're super smart to be curious about how we work.
I absolutely love that. I think 11% of my listeners of a podcast called This Is Woman's Work are men. And I could not be any more excited. They have a special spot in my blanket for it. So I'm with you. Okay, so my parting advice is something that flies in the face of the fake it till you make it advice we get a lot, especially in business when we're up to something big. I don't love fake it till you make it. I think we as women have been told that we should be faking far too much for far too long.
Yeah.
And it doesn't serve us to not be in our authenticity. So I've replaced it, and it's going to sound like semantics, but it's really powerful. Choose it until you become it. Choose confidence, minute by minute, day by day, week by week, whatever it takes. Choose it until you become it. Choose it until the feeling catches up. Because I think a lot of us think confidence is a feeling we either have or we don't. Like I woke up feeling confident today, or I didn't. And one of the greatest, coolest things I've learned about confidence is that it's very much a choice. And you're probably choosing it far more often in your life than you're giving yourself credit for. So choose it until you become it, one foot in front of the other towards what matters most until the feeling catches up, and it will. And just know that I'm cheering for you every step of the way.
I love it. Oh, so good. This has been so great. So obviously you want to stalk Nicole all over the interwebs. Well, let's just start with LinkedIn, where we go to do business. So she is there. Her full name, all of this is going to be in the show notes. You can search her on LinkedIn and follow her there. We'll also put her podcast link, This Is Women's Work, in the show notes as well. You can go to NicoleKalil.com. And any other, we can find your book on Amazon, all the places, also your website.
All the places.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of local bookstores. They probably won't have it, but you can ask them to order it. Let's keep them in business. But yeah, you can find it really anywhere.
Same, girl, same. All right. So, well, first of all, thank you for sharing yourself, your confidence, your vulnerability, and everything with our audience today.
It has been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
For sure. Okay, Bombshell, you know what we do at this stage of the game. We think of who in our life that is a bombshell or an aspiring bombshell who needs to hear this message. And I guarantee you, statistically, it's probably every woman you know. So I'm not asking you to send out a big email blast, but think about who needs to hear Nicole's message and who needs to maybe buy Nicole's book. Share this episode, and then you've done your part to help somebody else become a bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman in business. And that's what we're all about, right? We have to figure it out for ourselves and then be in service to other people. And with that final sentiment, I will see you on the next episode.